The June sun beat mercilessly on the parade grounds of Paris Island. Heat waves shimmered off the freshly waxed asphalt as 1,000 families crowded the bleachers, waving programs and clapping as young men and women marched with military precision. Elena Marquez sat quietly in the third row, clutching her program so tightly her knuckles were white. She had flown in from Albuquerque for this moment, her heart pounding with pride and nerves, though she had never imagined herself at a Marine Corps graduation. Her son, Private First Class Mateo Marquez, had just finished his grueling 13-week boot camp. She had spent countless nights worrying about him, imagining every possible danger, every possible failure. But now she was here and the moment felt surreal. She leaned forward in her chair, craning her neck to catch a glimpse of him. There he was, marching perfectly in step, shoulders back, chin up, eyes forward. She smiled, tears threatening to spill. Elena had dressed modestly, simple jeans, a pale blue blouse, and sneakers. She tied her dark hair back in a practical ponytail. From a distance, she appeared like any other mother. But on her right wrist, a small, faded tattoo peeked from beneath the sleeve, a circular design with 3 intersecting lines, a relic of a reckless night she thought she had buried decades ago. She had gotten it at 19 during a summer she wished she could erase. She had never thought anyone from that time would ever see it again. Yet from across the stands, Captain James Kavanaugh, a tall, rigid, and impeccably disciplined Marine officer, froze mid-step. His eyes, trained to notice patterns and anomalies, locked not on the recruits, not on the banners waving in the sun, but on Elena's wrist. His face drained of color, his breathing hitched. He whispered under his breath, almost to himself. It can't be, after all these years. Memories clawed their way to the forefront of his mind, memories he had long tried to bury beneath mission logs and commendations. The night in the jungles of South America, the fire, the chaos, the one person who had saved his life and disappeared before he could thank her. That tattoo, unmistakable, the same symbol that had marked someone who had vanished without a trace. He swallowed hard, gripping the railing, feeling an unsettling mix of fear and relief. He knew her, or at least he had known her by another name. Meanwhile, Elena waved when she spotted Mateo, tears slipping freely down her cheeks. He smiled, spotting her, and broke formation just slightly to wave back. His polished black boots clicked on the asphalt in perfect time with the rest of his unit. She couldn't hear the commands over the roar of the families, but she could see the pride in his eyes, the pride she had nurtured in him since he was a boy, the pride she felt now, burning hot and blinding. Elena's thoughts didn't drift to the tattoo. She hadn't considered it for years, not since she had carefully hidden the story behind it, the story of the summer that had changed everything. She had spent her adult life avoiding recognition, hiding in plain sight, raising Mateo alone, working double shifts at a diner, scrubbing floors, washing dishes, never letting anyone get close enough to see the woman she had been. But Kavanaugh could see it. He didn't take his eyes off her. His jaw tightened, muscles straining. He had been trained to remain calm, to act rationally under pressure, to suppress instinct. But instinct had no control over recognition. That tattoo was a marker, a signal, a warning from the past he had vowed never to revisit. He stepped back, gripping the railing so tightly that his knuckles whitened. He debated, do I approach her now? Do I say something? Or do I stay silent and hope she doesn't notice me? The Marine Corps thrived on discipline, order, and protocol. Yet here, none of that mattered. Elena laughed softly at something Mateo said to the boy marching next to him, completely unaware of the storm forming just yards away. She had no idea that someone from her past, someone she had saved, someone whose life she had altered forever, was staring at her with a mixture of fear and disbelief. Kavanaugh's hand itched toward his holster, though he knew he had no reason to draw. He didn't need a weapon. His mind was a battlefield of memories, the jungle fires, the screams, the orders that had gone wrong, and her, the one who had risked everything and vanished. The program crackled in his hand, unnoticed. Families cheered and clapped, but his attention had narrowed to a singular point, her wrist. A bead of sweat slid down his temple as he tried to piece together the timeline. How was she here? After all these years, she had disappeared into anonymity. She had vanished. And now, standing in the sunlight, smiling and waving at her son, she was visible again. Real, human, untouched by the horrors of the past she had survived. Kavanaugh's gaze flicked to Mateo. The boy, so full of life, so unaware, was the reason Alina had survived, the reason she had returned to society instead of continuing a life of hiding. The son she had loved fiercely had unknowingly drawn her out of the shadows, into a place where danger was once again imminent. Alina leaned down to wave at someone in the crowd, brushing a lock of hair from her face. The tattoo caught the light. Kavanaugh froze again, swallowing hard. His pulse thundered in his ears. He had to speak to her now. Waiting would be catastrophic. But what could he say? How do you address a ghost from the past in the middle of a graduation ceremony without causing panic, without unraveling the delicate threads of the present? From behind him, a voice muttered, cautious and low, "Captain, you don't want to do this here." Kavanaugh's head snapped toward the voice. It belonged to Master Gunnery Sergeant Hale, his mentor and a man he trusted more than anyone. Hale's gaze was sharp, unwavering, and knowing. "She's here," Kavanaugh said quietly. "I see her." Hale's eyes narrowed. "Then be careful. Some ghosts are meant to stay buried." Alina finally spotted Mateo up close. He ran toward her, his polished boots pounding on the concrete. She opened her arms and he lifted her off the ground in a hug. Her laughter rang out, unrestrained, and her tears flowed freely. Kavanaugh's stomach twisted. Every instinct screamed at him, approach, speak, warn, protect. But he couldn't, not yet, not in front of the crowd. He had to wait. Yet the moment felt fragile, like a soap bubble that could burst at any second. One wrong move, one glance, one recognition from the wrong person, and everything would collapse. Alina and Mateo spun together in joy, the world around them fading to insignificance. But in that blur of sunlight and celebration, Kavanaugh saw clearly. The past had arrived, and it was watching her just as intently as he was. The tattoo, small, circular, 3 intersecting lines, was no longer just a memory. It was a signal, it was a warning, and it was about to change everything. Kavanaugh clenched his jaw and whispered again, almost to himself, "She's alive, and she's here." Hale's hand on his shoulder reminded him silently that the world outside this graduation was not safe. Alina Marquez, mother, survivor, ghost of a past mission, was here, but so was danger. And neither of them would walk away unscathed. As Alina waved to Mateo again, oblivious to the storm forming around her, Kavanaugh's eyes narrowed. He knew one thing for certain. This graduation, this sunny afternoon, was the calm before a storm that had been 20 years in the making. And the storm had just begun. The graduation ceremony ended with the ceremonial claps and the echo of the final commands. Families surged forward, chasing their newly minted Marines across the parade grounds. Alina Marquez tightened her grip on her program and rushed toward Mateo, who grinned as he broke from formation. Her legs ached from the long wait, but she didn't care. She was here now. She threw her arms around him, lifting him slightly as he hugged her back, his uniform crisp, his eyes shining with pride. "Alina," Mateo laughed, pulling back slightly, "you made it." "I told you I would always," she whispered, her voice breaking as tears slipped down her cheeks. Behind her, Captain James Kavanaugh moved cautiously, threading through the crowd, keeping his gaze fixed on the woman who had vanished from his life 2 decades ago. Every step brought a flood of memories he had tried desperately to forget. The tattoo on her wrist, the faint circular symbol with 3 intersecting lines, was unmistakable. It was the same mark he had seen in classified reports, the same mark that had saved his life once in a covert operation no one officially acknowledged. And here she was, in broad daylight, smiling at her son as if the past didn't exist. Kavanaugh's heart pounded in his chest. His training screamed for caution, for protocol, but instinct was louder than discipline. He had to speak to her. But when? And where? And what could he possibly say without risking everything? Before he could decide, a firm hand clamped down on his shoulder. "Captain," came a low, rough voice. Kavanaugh turned to see Master Gunnery Sergeant Hale, his mentor and confidant. Hale's eyes were sharp and calculating, trained to read a room in an instant. He followed Alina's every movement with an intensity that bordered on obsession. "She's here," Kavanaugh whispered. Hale's jaw tightened. "I see that," he said flatly, "and I see the trouble she brings with her. Don't do anything stupid. Some ghosts are meant to stay buried." Kavanaugh's grip on the railing tightened. "She saved lives, Hale, lives that matter, including mine." Hale's eyes narrowed. "And she disappeared. You don't know what she left behind. You don't know who's still looking." Alina laughed softly as Mateo handed her a small, folded letter he had saved for her. "Mom, you have to read this," he said. "It's from our drill instructor. Said I did good." She smiled, slipping the letter into her bag, oblivious to the storm brewing around her. The graduation field, with its polished boots and waving flags, had become a backdrop for something far more dangerous than any Marine drill. Kavanaugh hesitated for a moment, debating whether to approach her now. Each step brought him closer to the truth and closer to danger. The past had a way of exploding without warning, and he couldn't predict who might be watching, listening, or following. "Captain," Hale said, his tone suddenly sharp, "you need to understand, if you confront her, you don't just expose her. You expose yourself, the Corps, everyone connected to that mission. And believe me, people will come looking." Kavanaugh's eyes flicked back to Alina, who was kneeling to hug a group of newly graduated recruits who approached her son. She radiated warmth, entirely unaware of the tension surrounding her. He remembered her as she had been in the jungles, fearless, cunning, reckless in the best way. Back then she had been a ghost operative, moving between missions without notice, leaving no trace. And now she was a mother, ordinary, vulnerable, and radiant. Something about seeing her here, alive and well, struck him in a way he hadn't expected. For years he had believed she was gone, or worse. And now here she was, standing before him in the sun, as if the world had allowed her a second chance. But he knew better. The memory hit him like a punch. He remembered the night they had been ambushed, how she had pulled him from a collapsing building, the chaos, the fire, the betrayal. She had saved lives that night and vanished before anyone could properly thank her. The mission was classified, the losses were official, and her existence unrecorded. He glanced at Mateo again, so full of life, completely unaware of the weight of history surrounding him. The boy had inherited his mother's courage, he realized, and perhaps her recklessness too. He didn't want Mateo caught in the crossfire of secrets and danger he couldn't yet explain. Kavanaugh took a deep breath and stepped closer, trying to catch her attention without alarming anyone. "Ma'am," he called softly, his voice cutting through the laughter and chatter of families. Alina turned, her eyes meeting his. For a fraction of a second, recognition flickered, quick, controlled, wary. She smiled politely, masking the flicker of memory he couldn't yet see. "Do I know you?" she asked carefully, curiosity mixed with caution. "Years ago," Kavanaugh said, lowering his voice. "You were embedded with us during Operation Grayson." Alina's expression hardened, her laughter faded. She glanced at Mateo, who frowned, sensing tension but not understanding. "Captain," she said, voice steady despite the sudden adrenaline spike, "my son doesn't need to hear about any of this." Kavanaugh hesitated. "He does need to know why they're looking for you again," he said quietly, eyes scanning the crowd for any sign of movement beyond the families. From the edge of the bleachers, Hale's eyes darted around nervously. He muttered under his breath, "They're already here. The moment you speak to her, the past moves forward." Alina's breath hitched slightly. She had spent 20 years hiding, working quiet jobs, raising her son alone, living under the radar. And now someone had found her, the very person whose life she had once saved. Mateo stepped closer, confused. "Mom, what does he mean?" She knelt down to his level, her hands resting gently on his shoulders. "It's complicated," she said, her voice trembling just enough to betray her fear. "Before you were born, I worked with Marines. Not officially, not legally, but we saved people." Mateo's eyes widened. "You what? Mom, why didn't you tell me?" "Because the mission went wrong," she whispered, glancing briefly at Kavanaugh. "And someone framed us for it. We had to disappear." Hale's face was tight with tension, scanning the perimeter like a predator sensing danger. "They're already here," he warned. Mateo's hand found his mother, holding on tightly. "So, you were hunted." Alina nodded, swallowing hard. "Yes, and they might still be looking." Kavanaugh stepped forward, voice steady but firm. "We have new intel. They know she's alive. They're reopening the case. And if you stay here—" He didn't finish, but the implication was clear. Danger was already moving toward them. Alina's eyes darted around the crowd. The ordinary afternoon had transformed into a chessboard. Every face could be an enemy. Every movement had significance. Every second counted. She pulled Mateo close, wrapping her arms around him. "We need to be careful," she said softly, heart hammering, "and we need to move soon." Kavanaugh glanced back at Hale, who gave a subtle nod. The past was no longer dormant. It had arrived, and it had found Alina. Alina took a deep breath and looked at Mateo, trying to mask the storm she felt inside. "I know this is confusing," she said, "but right now, we just need to get somewhere safe." Mateo, though confused, nodded, trusting the woman who had raised him, the woman who had faced life's hardest battles and come through. Kavanaugh's jaw tightened. His mission had just changed. Protecting her wasn't optional, it was imperative. But doing so without exposing the dangerous truths of the past would require every ounce of skill, strategy, and courage he possessed. He cast a final glance at the faded tattoo on her wrist. The symbol that had haunted his dreams for years now pulsed with meaning, more urgent than ever. He didn't know how much time they had, or who might be watching. But one thing was certain. The peaceful graduation afternoon had ended the moment he recognized her, and nothing would ever be the same again. The crowd began to disperse as families lingered, hugging and photographing their graduates. Alina clutched Mateo's hand tightly, feeling the weight of every step she had ever taken to protect him. The sun reflected off her wrist, revealing the tattoo to anyone who might know. She had believed it invisible, forgotten, a relic of a reckless past. But Captain Kavanaugh's eyes had seen it. Hale's warning had confirmed it. The past had arrived. Behind them, Kavanaugh and Hale moved deliberately, keeping pace without drawing attention. Hale's face was grim. "Captain," he muttered, voice low, "you don't understand. You have no idea who's still watching her. Some people never forget. Some people never forgive." Kavanaugh's jaw tightened. "Then we protect her. That's the only option." Alina slowed, sensing tension she couldn't yet name. "Mom, are we leaving?" Mateo asked softly, confusion etched across his young face. He had just graduated, and yet the joy in his eyes was already clouded. "Yes," Alina said, voice steady. "We need to go somewhere safe first, trust me." As they navigated the crowded walkway toward the parking lot, Hale's sharp eyes scanned every angle. Every passerby, every car, every shadow became a potential threat. Alina followed instinct, years of training buried deep in muscle memory guiding her movements. Though she hadn't been in active operations for 2 decades, she had never truly stopped running from danger. And now the danger was back, real, tangible, and close. "Captain," Hale whispered as they approached the lot, "you don't know what they're capable of. This isn't some small-time pursuit. They'll do anything to silence her. Anything." Kavanaugh's fingers tightened around the strap of his bag. He glanced back at Alina, who walked slightly ahead with Mateo at her side. The bond between mother and son was palpable, fierce, and protective. It reminded him of why he had survived that night years ago. She had been fearless. And now that same fearlessness was radiating from her. But fear was only part of it. Alina was also acutely aware of the stakes. She had lived a life in shadows, training herself to vanish when necessary. Every instinct screamed at her. Move quickly, stay alert, don't engage anyone you don't trust. Mateo, though strong and proud as a new Marine, didn't know how to read the dangers surrounding them. "Mom, what's happening?" Mateo asked, breaking the tense silence. Alina looked down at him, masking her panic with calm authority. "Nothing you need to worry about, not yet, but we have to leave now. Can you trust me?" He nodded, though the unease in his young eyes betrayed him. "I trust you, Mom." They reached the parking lot, and the warmth of the afternoon sun did little to comfort them. Vehicles were scattered, some parked haphazardly by families still lingering. Alina scanned for an exit route. She needed more than just a car. She needed options, distance, and cover. Kavanaugh and Hale trailed a few steps behind, alert to every movement. Kavanaugh's mind raced. If Alina had truly been marked by the covert operation years ago, then it wasn't just curiosity driving the people who might be after her. It was vengeance. Or worse, orders to eliminate any trace of her involvement. As Alina reached a row of cars, she froze. Two black SUVs had just appeared at the edge of the lot, moving with a precision that screamed professional surveillance. The drivers didn't wave, didn't linger. They were scanning, searching. "They're here," Hale whispered sharply. "Get ready." Alina's pulse quickened. She had faced worse than this, but nothing prepared her for the moment she realized the past had found her son. She glanced at Mateo, who instinctively tightened his grip on her hand, fear dawning. "Stay close," she instructed. She moved toward a nondescript sedan, her movements calculated, precise, honed from years of evasion. Mateo followed instinctively, trusting her every step. Kavanaugh and Hale formed a protective formation around them. Every step became a measured dance, a silent choreography against the invisible threat. The black SUVs slowed, eyes scanning the crowd. One of the agents stepped out, adjusting his sunglasses, and his gaze swept the lot until it locked on Alina. Hale muttered under his breath, "They spotted her." Kavanaugh's mind raced. These weren't random pursuers, they were federal operatives trained to hunt targets like her. But why now? After 20 years of silence, what had triggered their return? Alina slid into the sedan, Mateo right behind her. She locked the doors quickly, signaling Kavanaugh and Hale to approach. Kavanaugh opened the passenger door, and Hale climbed in the back. The engine roared to life. "Drive," Alina commanded, her voice steady. Every movement was deliberate, every glance calculating. She had trained for moments like this, though she had hoped never to use the skills again. The SUV following them accelerated, the agent inside maintaining distance but closing steadily. Alina's hands gripped the wheel tightly. "We can't let them corner us," she muttered. Kavanaugh leaned forward, voice low. "Mom, who are these people?" Alina's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. "They're part of the group that tried to silence me after the mission went wrong. They've been waiting, watching all these years. And now they know I'm alive." Mateo's jaw dropped. They're after you, but I'm a Marine. You raised me to fight." "Yes, and you're my son," Alina interrupted firmly. "Which is exactly why I can't let you get involved until we know who's behind this. We survive first, explain later." Kavanaugh felt a chill as the SUV drew dangerously close. The agents inside didn't panic. They moved with a terrifying calm. Alina had underestimated no one in her life, but even she hadn't faced this level of professionalism outside the field. Hale gritted his teeth. They know her, and they won't stop until they either capture her or eliminate her. The sedan turned sharply, cutting into side streets, weaving past afternoon traffic. Alina drove with the precision of a seasoned operative, instinct guiding her every move. Mateo clutched the seat, awe and fear battling in his chest. "Mom, how are you so calm?" he whispered. Alina forced a small smile. "Experience, Mateo, and trust me, we'll be safe, just a little longer." Kavanaugh's eyes narrowed. He couldn't shake the feeling that every second they were on the road was another second closer to disaster. The black SUVs mirrored their movements, a deadly shadow that refused to break formation. Hale glanced at Kavanaugh. They're coordinating. 2 vehicles, standard surveillance. But if they have more agents waiting ahead, we're walking into an ambush. Alina pressed her lips together. She had trained for this scenario, planned for worst-case contingencies, but she hadn't accounted for the fact that her son, her only family, was now part of the equation. Every instinct screamed to protect him, even if it meant revealing her past, even if it meant danger. The sedan veered down a narrow alley, the SUVs following. Alina's eyes darted to a side exit, a chance to lose them at least temporarily. She calculated the turn, timing it perfectly, and the sedan shot out onto a quieter street. The SUV slowed, recalculating. Alina exhaled quietly, trying to steady her heartbeat. Mateo's hands were clammy, gripping hers tightly. "They're professionals," Kavanaugh said. "They won't give up, not now." Alina nodded. "Then we keep moving, and we find out why after we're safe." The city streets stretched ahead, each turn filled with uncertainty. The past, long buried, had returned, and this time there was no escaping it. As the sedan disappeared around the next corner, the agents in the SUVs radioed their positions. The hunt had begun in earnest, and Alina knew with grim certainty that every secret she had kept, every truth she had buried, was about to resurface. She glanced at Mateo, who looked out the window wide-eyed. She swallowed hard, forcing calm into her voice. "Hang on, son. We're just getting started." Kavanaugh clenched his fists. The woman in the driver's seat, his ghost from the past, was alive, dangerous, brilliant, and now under immediate threat, and he would follow her to the ends of the earth to keep her safe. But even he couldn't predict what lay ahead. Because the storm that had been 20 years in the making had finally arrived. The sedan rattled over potholes, the engine roaring as Alina wove through side streets, desperately trying to shake the black SUVs tailing them. Mateo clutched her arm, knuckles white, his Marine training offering little comfort in the chaos of being hunted with his mother. He had faced simulated ambushes in boot camp, but nothing could prepare him for this. Real danger, real people, real stakes. Alina's jaw was tight, eyes scanning every reflective window, every alleyway, every corner. The tattoo on her wrist throbbed under her skin, a silent reminder of the past she couldn't escape. 2 decades ago, it had marked her as a ghost operative, someone untraceable. Today, it marked her as a target. Captain Kavanaugh's eyes darted to the SUVs in the distance. He leaned closer, voice low and urgent. "Mom, we need a plan. They're not going to let us go." Alina didn't answer immediately. Her mind raced through options she hadn't considered in years. Safe houses, abandoned buildings, routes through crowded streets, anything to buy time. Every instinct honed from survival courses screamed at her. Protect the target, stay mobile, don't panic. Mateo's voice broke through her thoughts. "Mom, are they going to catch us?" Alina glanced at him, forcing a calm she didn't feel. "We're going to do everything we can to make sure they don't, but we need to work together, okay?" He nodded. "I trust you." Kavanaugh, seated beside them, swallowed hard. "I've dealt with operatives before, but she's on a different level. And these people, they're efficient, trained. They won't hesitate to act if they think you're a threat." Hale in the backseat grunted agreement. "They're not amateurs, and if they catch her, there's no guarantee of mercy. We need to draw them away from the boy." Alina's pulse surged. Protecting Mateo was non-negotiable. For 20 years, she had survived by staying invisible, by making herself untouchable. Now, her greatest vulnerability was not her mission or her enemies, it was her son. A sharp honk from behind snapped them all to attention. One of the SUVs had moved aggressively closer, trying to force them off the road. Alina's hands gripped the steering wheel tightly. She swerved skillfully, her reflexes precise, keeping the sedan from losing control. Mateo gasped, clutching the seat. They're trying to intimidate us, Kavanaugh said, leaning forward. Hold steady. Alina exhaled sharply, forcing herself to think. She needed a distraction, a way to split them up, a way to get Matteo out safely. Her mind raced through potential escape routes. A parking garage up ahead could provide cover, a maze to lose the pursuers. Turn here, she said, pulling a sharp corner into the entrance of a dimly lit garage. Dust swirled as tires screeched. The SUVs followed, but the confined space forced them to slow. Alina maneuvered expertly, looping around columns, using the shadows for cover. Matteo's eyes widened. Mom, you're incredible. Alina forced a small smile but said nothing. Praise could wait. Survival could not. Hale's voice came from the backseat, low and urgent. They're splitting up, 2 different routes. We need to choose carefully or risk getting boxed in. Alina's mind flashed through the streets she knew. A series of alleyways could give them a lead, but she would have to take a calculated risk. One wrong turn and they'd be trapped. She turned to Kavanaugh. You've been in operations. I need your advice. Kavanaugh didn't hesitate. We take the alley network. It's tight, but we can stay ahead if we move fast. I can cover your flank if they split. Alina nodded. Then we do it. They exited the garage into a narrow alley, tires screeching as dust kicked up behind them. The SUVs followed, but the tight corners and parked cars slowed them. Alina moved with the precision of someone who had once lived for moments like this. Every turn, every shift of the wheel, every glance in the rearview mirror was calculated. Matteo, now gripping the dashboard, asked softly, Mom, why didn't you tell me about this part of your life? Alina's lips pressed together. Because it wasn't safe, and because I wanted to protect you from it. Some things are better left in the past until they catch up with you. Kavanaugh's gaze flicked between mother and son. He realized fully now the stakes. This wasn't just a chase. This was a collision of past secrets and present danger. Alina had survived everything because she had been alone. Now she was. Matteo's life was entwined with hers, and if they failed, there was no undoing the consequences. Suddenly, a voice shouted from above. Elena Marquez, stop the car. Elena's heart leapt. One of the agents had climbed onto a rooftop trying to corner them. Reflexively, she swerved, the sedan lurching dangerously close to a dumpster. Matteo gripped the dashboard, white-knuckled. Mom, careful. Hale's voice came from the backseat. I've got the rear. Captain, flank left. Kavanaugh moved to cover, leaning out slightly, eyes trained on the agent above. The alley became a battleground of shadows, movement, and tension. Alina maneuvered expertly, taking advantage of the cramped space and dark corners. In a blur, she ducked another corner, slipping through a narrow passage that forced the SUVs to slow. The agents cursed, realizing they were being outmaneuvered. Alina's heart pounded. She was no longer just escaping. She was drawing them into a trap, buying time to think, to plan, to survive. Matteo leaned forward slightly. Mom, you used to do this. Alina's jaw tightened. I had to, back then, and now it's the same. Survival first, questions later. Kavanaugh watched her, awe and fear mingling. He had trained with the best Marines in the Corps, and yet this woman, this ghost from his past, moved with a skill that rivaled them all. She wasn't just surviving, she was orchestrating, anticipating, controlling. Suddenly, Alina slammed the brakes, spinning the car around a tight corner. The SUVs followed, but one clipped the dumpster she had swerved past earlier, skidding into a wall. The other slowed, reevaluating. Hale leaned forward. Good move, but it won't hold them long. They'll adapt. Alina nodded. Then we prepare for round 2. Matteo, hold on tight. Captain Hale, stay sharp. We're not done yet. The sedan roared back into the open street, tires screeching. Behind them, the agents regrouped, communicating through radios, eyes scanning for any advantage. Alina's tattoo itched under her sleeve, a subtle pulse reminding her of the life she once lived, a life she thought she had left behind. Mateo looked at her, eyes wide with a mixture of fear and admiration. "Mom, how are you so calm?" Alina forced a small smile. "Experience, Mateo, and the fact that I've faced worse. But never forget every second counts, and right now we're counting every second." Kavanaugh's voice was firm. "We can't outrun them forever. We need a plan beyond just driving." Alina's mind raced. Safe houses, alternate routes, allies she hadn't contacted in years. Each option carried risks, but they had no choice. The past had caught up, and now the future depended on how fast, how smart, and how fearless they could be. As the sedan sped into the maze of the city streets, weaving past pedestrians and oncoming traffic, the agents in the SUVs radioed updates. The hunt was no longer casual. It was systematic. Alina realized with grim clarity that they were no longer just escaping. They were running out of time. And then she saw it, an overpass up ahead. A potential shortcut, but also a deadly choke point if the agents anticipated it. She swore under her breath. Every instinct screamed that this choice could either save them or end everything. "Mom, what do we do?" Mateo whispered. She glanced at him, determination blazing in her eyes. "We trust the plan. We stay together, and we don't stop, no matter what." Kavanaugh glanced at Hale. "They're fast, but she's faster for now." Hale's expression was grim. "For now, but they adapt, and when they do." Alina pressed the accelerator, heart hammering, eyes sharp, hands steady. The chase wasn't over. The confrontation had only just begun. Some ghosts never stay buried, some threats never die. And some mothers never back down when their children are at stake. The sedan roared through the twisting city streets, dust and exhaust trailing behind them like smoke from a wildfire. Alina's knuckles were white as she gripped the wheel, heart hammering in her chest, every muscle coiled with tension. Mateo sat beside her, stunned and breathless, trying to reconcile the image of his mother, the warm, loving woman he had grown up with the lethal, precise operator now navigating them through deadly pursuit. Behind them, the black SUVs continued to stalk them, relentless and coordinated. The drivers were professionals, trained to anticipate every move. Their presence was a reminder that the past Alina had tried to bury had not forgotten her. Captain Kavanaugh leaned forward, voice low but urgent. "Mom, they're closing in faster. We can't keep outmaneuvering them forever. We need somewhere to regroup." Alina's eyes flicked to a narrow side street lined with abandoned warehouses. A memory surged. An old ally, someone she had trusted long ago, had once used this network to hide operatives. She hadn't thought of it in years, but it could work now. "Turn here," she instructed, spinning the wheel sharply into the alley. The sedan fishtailed slightly, tires screeching, but she maintained control. Mateo gripped the dashboard wide-eyed. "Mom, you really used to do this." Alina forced a calm laugh. "Yes. And sometimes you learn to survive by making split-second choices." She glanced at Kavanaugh, eyes intense. "We'll be safe for now, but we can't stay hidden for long. I have to tell Mateo the truth. He needs to know who I really am if we're going to survive this." Mateo's gaze widened. "The truth about you." "Yes," she said, her voice tight but steady. "Before you were born, I worked in operations you wouldn't even believe. I wasn't just your mother. I was someone they couldn't track, someone who risked everything to save lives, sometimes in ways no one ever knew." Kavanaugh's jaw tightened. He realized that the calm, confident mother he had observed was also a woman who had lived through missions far more dangerous than any boot camp scenario. And now, the boy she loved was entwined in a world he had never seen. Hale's voice came from the backseat tense. "They're adapting. They know her tactics. If we don't change the plan, they'll trap us." Alina nodded, scanning the alleyways. "We need to split them up. Draw attention to one vehicle while the other follows a different route. It's risky, but it's the only chance." Mateo leaned forward, breathless. "Mom, I don't understand. Who are they really?" Alina took a deep breath. "They're people who wanted me gone. Years ago, I stopped a disaster during a mission overseas, one that could have cost countless lives. But the operation was classified. The powers that be didn't want anyone to know I survived. I vanished to protect you, and to protect anyone who might have been endangered by me. Mateo's face paled. So, they're hunting you because of what you did. Yes, she whispered, and because some of the people I trusted then didn't forgive me for disappearing. Kavanaugh glanced at Hale. This is bigger than we thought. They're not just after her, they want leverage, secrecy, closure. They'll do whatever it takes. Alina's pulse quickened. She had spent 20 years hiding, working quietly, raising Mateo, living in plain sight. And now, the past had returned with a vengeance, pulling her son into a web she had tried to protect him from. A sudden sound of tires skidding brought her attention forward. One of the SUVs had split off, trying to flank them from the side. Alina swore under her breath and slammed the brakes, spinning the sedan around a corner with precision. The vehicle lurched violently, but she regained control. Mateo gripped her arm. "Mom, how did you?" Alina didn't answer. Focus was paramount. Survival came first, explanations later. Hale's voice cut in, low and urgent. "They're professional. Don't underestimate them. If you want to keep Mateo safe, you need to tell him everything he needs to know fast." Alina swallowed hard. The truth she had buried for 2 decades was heavy, full of risks, and could change everything for her son. She had hoped to reveal it slowly, in moments of calm. But calm had ended the moment the SUVs appeared. "Mateo," she said firmly, "there's something I have to tell you. I didn't just disappear to work quiet jobs. Before you were born, I was involved in a mission with the Marines overseas. Not officially. We operated in the shadows. I saved lives, but the mission went wrong, and I was forced to vanish to protect everyone, including you." Mateo's jaw dropped. "Mom, all these years, you were what, a spy?" Alina nodded, forcing her voice to remain steady. "Not exactly, but yes, I was someone they couldn't track, someone who risked everything, and now those same people are looking for me again." Kavanaugh's hands clenched the seat. "Mom, if they catch you—" "I know," she interrupted, cutting him off. "That's why we keep moving. I won't let them catch us. Not today, not ever." The sedan sped forward, entering a tunnel that darkened their path. The black SUVs hesitated at the entrance, calculating whether to follow. Alina took the opportunity, weaving skillfully through the confined space, shadows masking their movements. Mateo, still processing the revelation, finally whispered, I always thought I knew you, but this is unbelievable." Alina's voice softened. "I've tried to give you a normal life. I wanted you to grow up safe. But sometimes the past catches up, no matter how fast you run." Kavanaugh watched her closely, aware of the delicate balance she maintained. A mother protecting her son, a former operative surviving deadly pursuit, a woman confronting the past she had long buried. The tunnel ended, opening into an empty industrial yard. Alina slowed, scanning the perimeter. She spotted a small abandoned warehouse at the far corner, a temporary refuge. The SUVs had not followed. The agents were waiting, calculating their next move. "This will have to do," Alina muttered. She parked the sedan behind a stack of crates, cutting the engine. Silence fell, punctuated only by distant city sounds. Mateo glanced at her, fear and awe in equal measure. "Mom, what now?" Alina placed her hand on his shoulder. "Now we survive, we regroup, and we find out who is behind this and why." Kavanaugh stepped closer, lowering his voice. "They won't give up easily. Whoever's orchestrating this, they know exactly what they're doing." Hale nodded grimly. "And we can't trust anyone outside this group. It's going to get messy." Alina's heart pounded as she considered the options. Safe houses, allies from decades ago, escape routes, everything had risks. But she had no choice. For Mateo's sake, she had to face the truth and face the people who had hunted her for years. She glanced at the tattoo on her wrist. the faint symbol that had once marked her as a ghost operative. It pulsed subtly under her skin, a reminder of the woman she had been and the danger she still carried. Mateo looked at her, voice trembling. "Mom, I'm scared." Alina knelt beside him, holding his face gently. "I know, son, I'm scared too, but fear doesn't control us. It drives us to survive, and we will survive together." Kavanaugh's eyes were sharp, scanning the shadows outside the warehouse. "We need a plan. They'll find us if we stay here too long." Alina nodded. "Then we rest briefly, we regroup, and we strike back smarter, faster. And Mateo, you need to know everything I did back then I did to save lives, and to give you a future. That's why I survived. That's why I'm here now." Hale's gaze softened slightly at her words. "She's telling the truth, and we'll make sure she gets out alive, but the clock is ticking." Outside, the black SUVs lingered, agents moving with deadly precision, watching, waiting, calculating. The game had changed. Alina had revealed part of her past. Mateo had seen the truth, and the pursuit was only just beginning. Alina exhaled slowly, gripping Mateo's hand. The warehouse was quiet, shadowed, temporary, but safe, for now. The revelation had been made, and the next step would require every ounce of courage, skill, and trust they had. Because the past was no longer a shadow, it was a threat, and it would not rest until it reclaimed what it sought. The abandoned warehouse smelled of dust and rust, the faint tang of oil and metal lingering in the stale air. Alina Marquez leaned against a support beam, her body taut with exhaustion and adrenaline. Mateo sat nearby, still reeling from the revelation of her past, trying to make sense of the woman he had always thought he knew. Captain Kavanaugh and Master Gunnery Sergeant Hale moved quietly around the perimeter, their eyes scanning every corner, every shadow, every potential threat. Alina rubbed her wrist where the tattoo throbbed faintly, a subtle, almost imperceptible pulse that reminded her of the past she had once buried. She had spent 20 years hiding from it, and yet now it had found her, dragging her into the open, endangering her son. Kavanaugh approached, voice low. "We need to consider our options carefully. The SUVs aren't just tailing us, they're coordinating. Whoever's behind this knows your tactics, Alina. They're professionals. They won't give up easily." Alina nodded, jaw tight. "Then we force them to make a mistake. They think they're controlling this chase, but we'll turn it against them." Mateo frowned. "Mom, how can you be so calm?" Alina glanced at him, forcing a small, reassuring smile. "Experience, son, and the fact that fear doesn't help us. It only slows us down, but we have to be careful. One wrong move and it could cost us everything." Hale's voice broke the tense silence. "I've checked the surrounding streets. Reinforcements could be nearby. We can't stay here long or they'll corner us." Suddenly, a faint noise echoed from the far side of the warehouse, metal scraping, soft but deliberate. Alina's body tensed instantly, every sense heightened. "They've found us," she whispered. Kavanaugh gestured toward the sound. "Cover the exits, stay quiet, we don't know how many there are." Alina motioned Mateo toward a stack of crates, keeping him low and behind cover. His eyes were wide, fear mingling with awe as he watched his mother transform from loving parent to tactical leader in an instant. The scraping grew louder. Shadows moved outside the broken windows. Alina exhaled slowly, controlling her breathing. "Remember what I taught you," she said quietly. "Observe first, react second. Panic is our enemy." Kavanaugh checked the windows. 2 agents, maybe 3. They're moving in pairs, scanning for an entry point. Alina's mind raced. She needed a distraction, a way to turn the ambush into an opportunity. She noticed an old forklift near the back of the warehouse, a chain of heavy chains dangling from it. An idea formed. "Kavanaugh," she whispered, "grab the crate over there. Hale, stay with Mateo. We create noise, something to draw them in and split them up." Kavanaugh nodded, understanding immediately. "Ready when you are." Alina's pulse surged as she moved toward the forklift, glancing at Mateo to reassure him. Stay low, trust me. The first shadow appeared in the window, a black-suited agent cautiously peering inside. Alina pulled the chain, letting it clatter violently onto the metal floor. Sparks flew as it struck a crate. The noise echoed through the warehouse, drawing the agent's attention. The shadow froze, then glanced at the others. "She's in there," one shouted. Kavanaugh lunged at the nearest crate, pushing it to block one of the entrances. The agents moved in cautiously, weapons drawn, but Alina was already in motion, sliding along the shadows toward another exit. Hale crouched beside Mateo. "Stay close," he instructed. "Mom's got this." The agents entered, only to find empty shadows where Alina had been. Their communication radios crackled. "She split. Don't let her escape." Alina's heart pounded, but her focus remained razor-sharp. She knew the warehouse layout intimately. She had studied every corner, every potential escape route. 20 years of evasion had honed her instincts to perfection. Mateo watched from behind Hale, awe and fear battling in his young face. "She's incredible," he whispered. Hale shot him a glance. "She's dangerous, and right now she's protecting you. That's why you need to stay calm." Alina slipped through a narrow passage leading to the back alley. The agents split, following different paths. She ducked behind a stack of crates, catching her breath, then used a makeshift pulley to send another heavy metal object crashing onto the floor. The sound reverberated, forcing the agents to adjust their approach. Kavanaugh joined her silently. "Good thinking, but we can't keep this up indefinitely. They'll adapt." Alina nodded, her eyes scanning the rooftops. Movement above. Another agent had climbed, trying to predict their escape. She grabbed a length of chain, swinging it to dislodge debris onto the agent. He yelped, balancing precariously before retreating. Mateo's voice came from the other side of the warehouse, soft but frightened. "Mom, what if they catch you?" Alina's heart clenched. "Then we fight, son, but we won't let that happen, not today, not ever." Kavanaugh's eyes flicked toward a narrow fire exit. "That way. It leads to an empty street. We can use it to split them up and get you out." Alina moved toward the exit, signaling Kavanaugh to cover her flank. Hale followed with Mateo, keeping him close. The air was thick with tension, every heartbeat amplified, every shadow a potential threat. Outside, the street was quiet, but Alina knew better. The agents were professionals. They would predict, anticipate, and act. She had to move faster than they could think. "Go," she whispered to Kavanaugh. They sprinted along the alley, moving swiftly but silently. Mateo followed Hale, breathless but trusting completely in his mother's guidance. Suddenly, headlights flared at the end of the street. A black SUV blocked the exit. Alina swore, assessing quickly. They had walked into a trap. Kavanaugh's hand rested on his weapon. "We have to create a diversion, now." Alina's mind raced. She noticed an old dumpster nearby. She kicked it, sending it sliding noisily into the street. The SUV swerved instinctively, trying to avoid it, giving them a fraction of a second to move. They bolted down a narrow corridor between buildings, shadows wrapping around them. The SUV regained control, engines roaring, but Alina's plan was already in motion. She led them through a series of interconnected alleys, drawing the pursuers further from the open streets. Hale's voice came over her shoulder. "Mom, we're losing daylight. They'll adapt soon. We need a longer-term plan." Alina's mind raced. 20 years of evasion had taught her one truth. Survival depended on staying one step ahead, anticipating threats before they emerged. She needed safe houses, old allies, resources she hadn't touched in decades, and she had to protect Mateo at all costs. As they rounded another corner, Alina paused briefly, catching her breath, scanning the shadows. The agents were still behind, but the chase had bought them temporary distance. Mateo, wide-eyed, whispered, "Mom, why didn't you tell me sooner?" Alina forced a small smile, heart heavy. "Because I wanted to protect you, and because I needed to survive first. But now the truth is our weapon. Kavanaugh's gaze met hers. We'll make it through this, but the ambush is only the beginning. Whoever's behind this, they won't stop. Alina's eyes narrowed, resolve hardening. Then we'll be ready. We've survived before. We'll survive again. And this time we fight back. The street stretched ahead, empty but dangerous, the shadows concealing more than just the night. The past had caught up. The hunt had intensified. And Alina knew with every fiber of her being that the next encounter could determine not just their survival, but the fate of everything they had worked for. Because in this game, hesitation meant death, and trust was a luxury they could no longer afford. The abandoned warehouse behind them was a memory now, a temporary refuge turned into a reminder of the hunt they could not outrun. Alina Marquez's boots pounded the cracked pavement, her mind racing faster than her feet. Mateo was close, eyes wide, trusting her instinctively. Captain Kavanaugh and Hale flanked them, weapons ready, senses sharpened to every sound, every shadow. Alina knew this chase was more than just survival. The people hunting her were not ordinary operatives. They were trained, relentless, and well-resourced. Whoever orchestrated this hunt had access to intelligence and networks that went beyond her worst assumptions. The past she thought she had left behind had never truly died. It had been waiting, biding its time. "Mom, what now?" Mateo whispered, breathless. Alina paused briefly, eyes scanning the street. "Now we fight smart. We can't just run forever. We need leverage, and we need to hit them where it hurts. Then and only then do we survive." Kavanaugh's eyes narrowed. "Leverage, you mean counterattack?" "Yes," she replied, determination hardening her voice. "We can't let them dictate this. We need to turn their pursuit into their vulnerability, but it requires precision, timing, and trust." Hale's gaze flicked toward the alleys. "We've got a small window before they adjust. They're professionals. They'll analyze every move we've made. But if we act now," his words trailed, unspoken but understood, timing was everything. Alina led them through a series of narrow streets, carefully calculating their approach. She knew the city's forgotten corners, abandoned buildings, and hidden alleys, places where shadows could become weapons and silence could mask movements. Mateo stumbled slightly, catching himself. "Mom, you know all this." "I lived it," she said softly. "For years I trained, I evaded, I survived. And now we use those skills to protect ourselves and to take the fight to them." They reached a derelict industrial complex, its rusted gates and graffiti-covered walls hiding its interior from prying eyes. Alina's plan was simple but risky. Lure the SUVs into the complex, divide their forces, and gather information on who exactly was orchestrating this relentless hunt. "Stay close," Alina instructed. "Once we enter, we control the environment. They won't know which way we'll strike." Kavanaugh nodded, sensing the shift in her energy. The mother who had raised Mateo was merging with the operative she had been, creating a deadly combination of intellect, instinct, and raw courage. Hale followed with Mateo, placing him safely behind cover as they entered the shadowed interior. The air inside was heavy with dust and the faint scent of oil and decay. Alina's eyes scanned every corner, noting potential vantage points, escape routes, and improvised weapons. Her tattoo pulsed faintly under her sleeve, a subconscious reminder of the life she had once lived. Kavanaugh whispered, "They're going to adapt fast. Whoever sent them, they won't underestimate her again." "They won't," Alina said, voice steady. "But we can use that against them. They'll assume we'll run. They won't expect us to strike." Hale crouched near Mateo. "Son, I know this is a lot, but your mother, she's going to keep you safe. Trust her and trust us." Mateo swallowed hard. I just never thought my mom was like this." "She is," Alina admitted. "But this is who I have to be right now, and you'll see courage comes in many forms." Outside, the SUVs moved cautiously, unaware that their prey had led them into the very trap Alina had engineered. She had studied their approach, anticipated their strategy, and now They were stepping into a maze she controlled. Alina's eyes flicked to the control room of the complex, broken and exposed. A series of cameras, long abandoned, still functioned with residual power. She could use them to observe their movements, track their positions, and plan her next strike. "Kavanaugh, I need you to take the left flank," she instructed. "Hale, stay with Mateo. I'll engage from above. Timing is everything. We move together but strike independently." Kavanaugh's jaw tightened. "Understood." Alina climbed a series of rusted ladders, her movements precise, silent. From above, she had a vantage point that allowed her to see every shadow, every movement. The SUVs approached the complex, slowed by the narrow entrances, unaware they were being watched. Her pulse surged as she prepared. Every instinct honed over 20 years surged to the forefront. Anticipate, evade, strike. The agents moved like predators, scanning every corner, but they did not see her. "Now," she whispered into a small communicator, signaling Kavanaugh. Kavanaugh moved swiftly, taking cover behind a stack of crates. He caught the first agent off guard, his presence forcing them to scatter slightly, creating confusion. Alina released a chain from above, letting it crash onto a metal drum, the reverberation disorienting the remaining agents. Mateo watched from his hiding spot, eyes wide. "Mom, you're amazing." Alina didn't respond. Her focus was absolute. She struck again, using shadows and sound to manipulate the movements of the agents. Every clash of metal, every displaced object was designed to split their forces and create openings. Hale guided Mateo to safety, whispering encouragement. "Stay low, stay quiet, she's in control, trust her." Outside, the SUVs radioed frantic updates. The agents inside were disoriented, unsure of the target's exact location. Alina had turned the hunter into the hunted. Kavanaugh's voice came over the communicator. "She's holding them. We've got the advantage. Keep moving." Alina's heart raced, but her movements were deliberate. She darted across catwalks, swung ropes, and used the shadows to mask her position. The agents were professional, but they were reacting, not anticipating. The balance of power had shifted. Mateo, hiding behind Hale, whispered in awe, "Mom, you're like a superhero." Alina smiled briefly, though her focus never wavered. Not a superhero, just someone who doesn't quit. One agent, realizing the trap, attempted to flank from the far side. Alina anticipated, dropping a metal grate to block the passage, forcing him back into the chaotic maze. The SUVs outside attempted to respond, but the narrow entrances slowed them. Hale whispered to Mateo, "This is why she's the best. She's not just running, she's controlling the fight." Kavanaugh joined Alina briefly on an upper catwalk. "We need to push them back further. We have them disoriented, but they'll recover fast." Alina nodded. "We can't underestimate them, but we can make them reveal everything they know. That's the goal. We hit them strategically, gather intel, and disappear before they regroup." The ambush turned into a counterstrike. Alina's plan was working. The agents were reacting, scattered and disoriented. Every move she made forced them to reveal a piece of the puzzle, who was orchestrating this relentless pursuit and what their ultimate goal was. Mateo, watching from below, whispered, "Mom, I think we're winning." Alina's eyes softened briefly as she glanced at him. "We're surviving, and survival is the first step toward victory. Never forget that." The agents began to retreat, realizing the terrain favored Alina and her team. The SUVs backed up, scanning for alternative approaches, but Alina had already anticipated every exit. The counterstrike was not just survival, it was a lesson, a statement. She was no longer hiding, and she would not be caught unprepared. Kavanaugh looked at her, awe evident in his eyes. "You're incredible. I've never seen anything like this." Alina's gaze hardened. "We're not done yet. This is only the beginning. They'll come again, stronger, but we're ready." Hale, still near Mateo, nodded. For now, we've bought time, but the storm isn't over. We need to plan the next move. Alina exhaled, allowing herself a brief moment of relief. The ambush had been turned. The hunters had been outmaneuvered, and for the first time in decades, she felt a measure of control over the chaos that had been chasing her. Mateo squeezed her hand. "Mom, you're a legend." Alina smiled faintly, her heart heavy but resolute. "Legends survive, son, that's all, and we're not done yet, not by a long shot." Outside, the black SUVs receded for now, regrouping, but Alina knew this was only a temporary victory. The battle had shifted, but the war was far from over, and when it resumed, she would be ready. Because she had survived before, and she would survive again. The night air was sharp and cold as Alina Marquez, Mateo, Captain Kavanaugh, and Hale moved cautiously through the abandoned industrial district. The city's skyline glimmered faintly in the distance, but here, in the shadows, danger could be anywhere. The SUVs from before had disappeared, but Alina knew better than to believe the threat was gone. The people hunting her were patient, precise, and ruthless. "This is it," she whispered to herself, her eyes scanning the dimly lit streets. "We finish this tonight." Mateo looked at her, a mixture of fear, awe, and determination in his young eyes. "Mom, I've never been more scared, but I trust you, always." Alina's chest tightened. "And that's exactly why you'll survive this. Trust is the weapon, son, and courage, never forget that." Kavanaugh and Hale flanked them, alert, every sense primed for the inevitable confrontation. They had led the agents through traps, split their forces, and disrupted their plans, but now, Alina knew they needed more than evasion. They needed resolution. The people hunting her wanted closure, revenge, or both, and she intended to give them neither. "Mom," Kavanaugh said quietly, "we can't predict everything. They'll have anticipated some of your tactics. Are you sure about this plan?" Alina's jaw tightened. "I'm sure. We draw them in, use the terrain, and force a choice. Confront us directly or lose everything they've built. They'll underestimate us. That's where the advantage comes from." The streets were silent, save for the distant hum of the city. Alina paused at a junction between two warehouses, her gaze fixed on the shadows that flickered in the corners of her vision. She knew they were coming. There was no doubt. Suddenly, headlights flashed. The SUVs returned, cautiously maneuvering down the street, two vehicles this time, more coordinated, more aggressive. Alina's pulse quickened. This was the final move, the culmination of 20 years of evasion and training, now distilled into one decisive moment. "Positions," she whispered to Kavanaugh and Hale. "Mateo, stay with Hale, trust your instincts, but stay low." The agents approached, unaware of the traps Alina had laid. She had spent the last hour preparing, debris scattered to slow pursuit, elevated vantage points for surveillance, and narrow alleys that would funnel their targets into predictable paths. Alina moved like a ghost, climbing to a high catwalk above the street. From her vantage, she could see the agents coordinating, radios crackling, tension mounting. Their professionalism was evident. They had tracked her carefully, but they were blind to the environment she controlled. "Wait for my signal," she whispered to Kavanaugh. Mateo gripped Hale's arm, watching as the tension built. "Mom, what if something goes wrong?" Alina's eyes softened as she glanced at him. "We survived together, that's all that matters, and I've never failed in survival, not once." The first SUV reached the junction, slowing to navigate the debris. Alina dropped a heavy chain from above, the sound echoing violently. Sparks flew as it collided with the vehicle, startling the driver. The second SUV accelerated to cover, but the narrow alley forced them to slow. Kavanaugh moved swiftly, engaging the agents in the first vehicle, forcing them to scatter. Alina's precision strikes from above created chaos and disorientation. Every agent that had once hunted her now reacted to her, moving defensively rather than offensively. Hale guided Mateo to safety, positioning him behind a stack of crates. "Stay down, son. Watch and learn, but stay safe." Alina's eyes locked on the remaining agents. "They've underestimated us for the last time," she whispered. The second SUV attempted to flank, but Alina anticipated it, dropping a makeshift barricade that forced them to halt abruptly. Sparks flew from the collision, metal twisted and groaned under the sudden force. The agents scrambled, radios buzzing frantically as they realized the terrain favored their prey. Kavanaugh radioed back, "We've got them disoriented, now's our chance." Alina nodded. She moved with a lethal elegance combining precision with instinct. She descended from the catwalk, landing silently behind the nearest agent. Before he could react, she incapacitated him, disarming him and rendering him harmless. The remaining agents faltered, confusion overtaking their training. Matteo watched, eyes wide, as the woman who had raised him transformed into the operative she had been decades ago. "Mom, you're unstoppable." Alina's expression softened briefly as she glanced at him. "No one is unstoppable, Matteo, but with skill, preparation, and courage, you can survive anything." The last agent in the second SUV raised his weapon, but Alina's timing was perfect. A chain swung with controlled force, disarming him before he could aim. Kavanaugh and Hale moved in to secure the final threats, and within moments, the immediate danger had passed. The street fell silent, save for the distant hum of the city. The agents were incapacitated, the SUVs abandoned, and Alina finally allowed herself to exhale. She looked at Matteo, who was pale but unharmed. "We did it," she whispered. Matteo ran to her, embracing her tightly. "You promised we'd survive, and we did." Alina held him close, feeling the weight of 20 years of secrecy, fear, and preparation finally lift, if only slightly. "Yes, we survived, and now the future is ours to protect." Kavanaugh approached, nodding toward the subdued agents. "They won't be coming back anytime soon. Whoever sent them, they'll think twice now." Hale added, "But this was just the beginning. The bigger threat, whoever orchestrated all this, might still be out there. We need to stay alert." Alina glanced at the tattoo on her wrist, the faint mark that had once symbolized a life of secrecy and danger. "Let them come. We're ready. And I'm not hiding anymore, not for anyone, not for anything." Matteo looked at her, admiration shining through. "Mom, I finally understand. You've always been protecting me, even when I didn't know it. I'm proud of you." Tears welled in Alina's eyes. "I've always had one mission, keep you safe. Nothing else mattered. And now, we have a chance to live our lives without fear." Kavanaugh and Hale helped Matteo up, and together, the four of them walked down the darkened street, moving away from the wrecked SUVs and the chaos they had orchestrated. The night was quiet, but it was also a new beginning, a moment of survival, courage, and revelation. Alina knew the threats would not vanish entirely. There would always be remnants of the past, shadows lingering in corners, whispers of old enemies. But tonight she had proven something. She was not the hunted. She was the strategist, the protector, the mother, and the survivor. As they disappeared into the maze of city streets, Matteo glanced up at her. "Mom, what happens now?" Alina smiled, a mixture of exhaustion and determination etched across her face. "Now we live, we rebuild, and we prepare for whatever comes next together." The distant lights of the city flickered, a reminder that life continued, danger and all. But Alina's heart was steady. For the first time in decades, she felt the balance shift, not just survival but control, not just fear but strength. And as they walked into the night, the shadow of the past behind them, one thing was certain. Alina Marquez would never back down. She had faced death, deception, and betrayal, and she had survived. The lesson was clear and the truth undeniable. Courage, skill, and love were stronger than fear, stronger than any enemy, stronger than any shadow from the past. Matteo squeezed her hand. "Mom, I'm ready for whatever comes next." Alina looked down at him, eyes full of pride. "So am I, son, so am I." And together they vanished into the night, survivors, warriors, and family bound by love and resilience.